Have you ever wondered what it would be like if a literal ghost from our oldest, most legendary stories suddenly just handed you their physical address? Right here we have oxidized bronze text reading Odysseus and ΕΥΧΗΝ ΟΔΥCCΕΙ, which translates to a vow to Odysseus. This isn't some faded line on fragile parchment or a verse in a fleeting song. We are talking about cold, hard metal and stone. Today, we're opening up an absolute thrill of a historical mystery, how a mythical hero from a 3,000-year-old epic poem somehow managed to leave behind very real, undeniable physical evidence on a sun-baked, rocky Greek island.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the dirt and the epic. We are going on a journey, moving from the boundless, magical oceans of Homeric fiction, straight down into the hyper-specific, very real rocky dirt of an ancient Ithacan shrine. So to really understand this dirt and how it fundamentally shatters the boundary between storytelling and reality, we first have to set the stage with the myth itself. You know the name, but who actually was Odysseus? Well, in ancient Greek mythology, he was the brilliant, wily king of Ithaca. He's the master strategist who famously cooked up the idea for the Trojan horse, which effectively ended the grueling 10-year Trojan War. But honestly, his greatest fame comes from what happened next. He was the ultimate, reluctant survivor of the sea, spending 10 more perilous, agonizing years just trying to navigate his way back home to his family.
That agonizing journey was of course captured in Homer's The Odyssey. Now, before his tale was locked into the 24 books of rigid poetry, that dactylic hexameter you might have studied in school, it was something entirely different. It was a fluid, breathing oral tradition. Around the 8th or 7th century BCE, traveling singers called rhapsodes would perform these incredible feats of oral poetry, improvising and tweaking the story for live, energetic audiences. This definitely wasn't just a book sitting on a shelf. It was a living, evolving performance that basically bound the entire ancient Greek world together.
And looking at the roots of this story brilliantly illustrates just how interconnected the ancient world really was. You see, the oral tradition didn't exist in a vacuum. In Homer's world, Odysseus meets the magic-wielding Circe at the very edge of the earth, just to get directions to the underworld. But check out the striking parallels with the much older epic of Gilgamesh. In that story, Gilgamesh journeys to the edge of the world and meets the divine goddess Suduri, who lives by the sea and helps him reach the land of the dead. Homer's epic was basically a giant sponge, absorbing these deep Near Eastern mythological influences to build its ultimate hero.
And the plot they built for him? Pure chaos. It's essentially a 3-step survival guide. Step 1. Escape the smoking ruins of Troy. Step 2. Survive an absolutely terrifying gauntlet of mythical monsters. He blinds the Cyclops Polyphemus, he resists the deadly lure of the Sirens by tying himself to a ship's mast, and he navigates massive, deadly whirlpools. Then, Step 3, he finally arrives home only to find 108 boorish suitors trying to marry his wife Penelope and steal his kingdom. So he violently reclaims his home, cementing his status forever as a legendary figure of endurance. Okay, so the crucial point is this. For centuries, historians have comfortably drawn a thick line right down the middle of this story. On one hand, we have the myth, the monsters, the sirens, the magic. We all agree that's fiction, right? But recently, archaeologists have unearthed something entirely real. We're talking dirt, stone, and physical architecture on the island of Ithaca that utterly shatters that neat little line between myth and matter. We are leaving the fiction behind now and digging straight into the ground.
Let's head to the excavation site and see how this builds a completely new narrative. This is Agios Athanasios, dramatically situated in northern Ithaca. For over 2 centuries, locals playfully referred to this rugged, sun-baked outcrop as the School of Homer. But starting in 2018, a dedicated archaeological team led by Professor Emeritus Giannis G. Lolos and Dr. Christina Marambea began peeling back the layers of this spring-laced slope. And wow! What they found was no local legend.
The timeline of this specific spot is staggering. Just look at how deep this goes. People were here in the 5th and 4th millennia BC, leaving behind Neolithic flint tools. But the real anchor point is in the 14th century BC, the Mycenaean era. That's the exact time scholars associate with the Trojan War. Archaeologists found a massive core-belled stone cistern carved deep into the rock, proving this was a major center of power and a crucial hub for fresh water long before Homer ever sang a single note. And then, jumping forward to the 3rd century BC, the whole site transforms into a Hellenistic shrine.
But a shrine to who? Well, that is exactly where the dirt gives up its ultimate secret. In the ruins of this structure, which was surrounded by little niches for votive offerings, the team unearthed an absolute treasure trove of evidence.
We are talking about ritual vessels, clay offerings, loom weights, a beautiful miniature bronze bust, and most importantly, 14 stamped roof tiles. This wasn't just some abandoned building. From the 3rd century BCE all the way to the 2nd century CE, this was a thriving, busy sanctuary. Those 14 stamped roof tiles and inscribed fragments, they weren't just decorative. They bore the unmistakable traces of a very, very specific name. One read Odysseus, meaning of Odysseus. Another read Odyssei, a dedication to Odysseus. This is it, the ultimate aha moment. It explicitly confirms that this shrine was entirely dedicated to the mythical king himself. They were literally worshipping a character from a poem. So why on earth would real people build a real stone shrine to a man who might have just been a campfire story? Because to the ancient Greeks, Odysseus became something so much larger than just a literary protagonist. He became their ultimate civic symbol of endurance, cleverness, and above all, nostos. Nostos is this deep, agonizing yearning for homecoming. It's a profound feeling of homesickness that anyone who has been away for too long can totally understand. The Greeks took this abstract emotional concept, mapped it onto the figure of Odysseus, and built a physical sanctuary where they could go to pray for their own safe returns.
And we know for a fact it wasn't just a handful of locals doing this. Archaeologists found over 100 pilgrim coins scattered all around the site. What makes these coins so vital is that they didn't just come from Ithaca. They came from cities across the vast Greek and Roman worlds. This proves that this sanctuary was a massive international destination. Travelers and sailors were going way out of their way, making arduous pilgrimages across the Mediterranean just to leave a coin at the doorstep of Odysseus.
But you know, it wasn't only sailors seeking safe passage. Remember those loom weights and spindle whorls we mentioned earlier? These artifacts are incredibly poignant. They heavily hint at female devotees performing specific rituals at the shrine. In the epic, Odysseus's wife, Penelope, famously fends off her 108 suitors by weaving and secretly unweaving a burial shroud every single night for years. It's highly likely that women visited this shrine using loom weights to directly invoke Penelope's legendary patience and perseverance.
When you put all this together, the sheer scale of devotion is just breathtaking. For over 1,000 years, a full millennium, real people maintain this site. Generation after generation climb those rocky staircases to offer thanks, leave coins, and make their vows. And here is the beautiful paradox of it all. A king whose defining characteristic was that he never stopped journeying, the ultimate wanderer, became one of the most fixed, enduring pilgrimage destinations in the ancient world.
And this worship bled right into grand civic life. The Greek Ministry of Culture actually connects this site to a 2nd century BCE decree found in Magnesia, over in Asia Minor. That decree talks about the Odysseia, massive athletic and cultural competitions held in Odysseus's name. Just try to imagine the roar of the crowds, the athletes covered in dust, and the vibrant, loud festivals happening right here at Agios Athanasios during its heyday. The myth was fully, completely anchored into their everyday civic reality and public entertainment.
Now, we do have to acknowledge that science and geography love a good debate. While the tradition strongly ties Odysseus to this newly excavated site on modern-day Ithaca, some modern classicists and geologists point to Homer's original geographical descriptions and argue his true inspiration was actually the neighboring peninsula of Pauliki on Kephallonia. But honestly, here is the beauty of this archaeological find. Regardless of modern geological debates, the ancient worshippers made their choice. They confidently chose this rugged outcrop in Ithaca as his sacred home, and they built their reality around it.
Which brings us to a final, really fascinating question. Does it actually matter if Odysseus was a real historical king? Whether he ever actually drew breath, fought at Troy, or blinded a Cyclops is almost beside the point now. Because thousands of years ago, real humans decided he mattered. They carved his name in stone, they spent their wealth traveling to his shrine, and they anchored their absolute deepest hopes in his story. By etching a fiction into the physical earth, they made Odysseus entirely, undeniably immortal. So, the next time you hear a myth, ask yourself what stories might be buried beneath your own feet. Thanks for checking out This Explainer.